A boy in 1,000. "Well, what did you do at school this morning?" asked Mummy when Jack came home to his dinner. "We had a jolly nice lesson on how to make a bird table," said Jack. "And I'm going to make one. I shall spread it with lots of food every day." "And where are you going to get this lots of food?" asked his mother. "Well, our teacher said that we were to have a cardboard carton of some sort and give it to our mothers and ask them if they'd put into it all the household scraps," said Jack. "You know, Mummy, bits of bread left over, or potatoes, that sort of thing." "Now, you know I give most of our scraps to the chickens for food," said his mother, "and Rover the dog gobbles up the rest." "Then I shall take a carton round to the neighbours," said Jack. "I'm sure they'll help me. Oh, Mummy, it would be fun to have a bird table and watch the birds come down and feed. I bet I'll tame a robin or two." "Here's an empty cream carton, then," said his mother, and Jack took it at once. "I'll pop round here and there after I've had my dinner," he said. And in about half an hour off he went, with a little empty carton. He knocked at Mrs. Jones's door and told her about the bird table he planned to make, and the food he was going to collect for the birds. "Well, now, that's a really good idea," said Mrs. Jones. "This is bitter weather, and the birds can't find much to eat, especially since it's been snowing so hard. Let me see what I've got on the way of bits." She half-filled Jack's carton with bread and bacon rind. He was very pleased. He went next door to Mr. Hollins, but Mr. Hollins wasn't so kind. "What? Feed the birds that steal my cherries every summer?" he said. "I should think not." "But you have so many cherries. Can't you spare them a few in the summer?" asked Jack. Bah! The door was shut. Jack went off to Miss Lacey's. "A bird table! Now that sounds a fine idea," said Miss Lacey. "Yes, of course. I'll save my bits of food for you each day. In fact, I could fill a whole carton of bits, you know, because we're a big household here. Why don't you leave me your carton to fill?" Before long, Jack had quite a round of people ready to save him their scraps. He decided that it would be easier to give them each an empty carton, and then to go around with his seaside pail and empty them all each morning into the pail. He made a fine bird table. It only took him 1 hour. Harry leant over the fence and watched him. "Why, all you did was to take your mother's old broom handle, dig a hole in the ground and ram it in, and then you nailed that flat board on the top of it, and then found some twigs and nailed them at the back. It looks fine, Jack. What food are you going to put on it?" "The food I collect from all the neighbours, Harry," said Jack. "You come in and look inside this pail of mine. The birds are going to get a fine feast." Harry came in to look. Gracious, what a hodgepodge of food! Potatoes, bits of somebody's rice pudding, bread, stale cake, bacon rinds, fat. What's this, a bone? Hey, are you going to feed dogs too?" Jack laughed. "No, I'm going to hang that down from the edge of the table for the tits and starlings to peck at. And do you know what I'm spending my Saturday money on this week?" "No, what?" said Harry, digging a stick about in the pail to see what else he could find there. "Half a pound of monkey nuts. Peanuts, you know," said Jack. "The birds go mad over them. I shall thread them on a string and hang them from the edge of the table too." In 2 days, all the birds in the district had discovered Jack's bird table, and it was full from morning to night. The robin was the very first one down on his table, pecking at some bread. When he saw Jack looking out of the window, he put his head on one side, swelled out his lovely red breast, and sang a loud little song. "Well, that's a very nice way of saying thank you," said Jack. He watched the other birds come down. The big blackbird, hungry for a potato. The starlings, quarrelsome and amusing, pushing each other, anxious to get their share. The big thrush with his freckled breast, and the many small sparrows, hungry and bold. And here are the blue tits, with their pretty blue caps. Oh, I thought they'd soon find a nut. Mummy, come here. Watch the birds swinging upside down on a string of peanuts. The neighbours soon got to know Jack very well indeed, for he appeared regularly every day with his pail to empty their bird food into it from the cartons he had left at each house. Sometimes, when they came home from shopping, they leaned over the fence to watch the birds on his table in the garden. There was often quite a little crowd of people there. "I wouldn't mind having a bird table myself," said Mrs. Peters one day. "Those blue tits are enough to make anyone laugh. They're proper little acrobats." "Oh, I'll make you one if you like," said Jack. "I'll go round to the carpenter and pick up a stick or pole of some sort for a leg, and a bit of board and some more nails." "I'll pay you for making it," said Mrs. Peters. "Would £1 do?" "Oh, yes," said Jack, delighted. "I'm saving up for my mother's birthday, but I haven't got very much yet. I'll set to work tomorrow for you. It's a Saturday." On Sunday morning, Jack took a fine bird table round to Mrs. Peters. He had got an old rake handle from the carpenter for twopence, and had sawn it in half. There, that would do for 2 bird tables, one for Mrs. Peters and one for anyone else who might want one. The carpenter had given him the bottom out of an old box for nothing, and a handful of nails. Mrs. Peters was delighted with the bird table, and told everyone about it. "You should just see the way the birds flock down," she said. "My, it's as good as a pantomime to watch them. Now, I wonder if Jack could make something of the kind for poor old Mrs. Hughes, who lives at the top of our building and can never get out at all. It would be something for her to watch. She can't see much but walls and chimneys from her window." As soon as Jack was told about Mrs. Hughes, he climbed all the 101 steps to her tiny 2-room flat at the top of the big building. Mrs. Hughes was surprised to see a small boy opening her door when she called, "Come in." He saw a very little old lady lying on a couch by the window. She smiled at him. "Well, who are you? I couldn't get up to open the door for you because I can hardly walk. It's nice to see you. I'm so lonely up here all by myself." "I'm Jack Milner, and I make bird tables," said the boy. "I just wondered if you'd like one for your windowsill. You've no idea how interesting it is to watch birds gobbling up all kinds of food, quarrelling and pushing each other about and hanging upside down to peck nuts and—" "Oh, yes, I know all about birds," said Mrs. Hughes. "I used to live in the country, and I love them. I miss them so much now. Could you really make a bird table for my windowsill? I should feel so happy again if I could watch the birds, and I've always bits of food left over. I could put a saucer of water out too." Jack went to the window. Alas, there was no windowsill, just a tiny ledge, not big enough to hold even a small bird table. I know what I could do," he said. "If you don't mind me driving a big nail in each side of the wooden window frame, I could hang a narrow board where your sill ought to be, and you could put food and water on that." I don't know why you should be so kind to me," said the old lady. "Do you know, you're the first person I've seen for 2 weeks. Nobody wants to climb up all the steps to my 2 rooms. Please, please do put up this bird table you're talking about. If I haven't any friends to climb the stairs, I'll soon have some who can fly to me." Jack was as good as his word. He soon drove in a couple of stout nails. He took a narrow board and made 2 holes in it, one at each end, and threaded rope through it, knotting it under the holes. Then he twisted the other ends of the rope round the nails and tied them there. "There's your bird table," he said. "I'll put out a saucer of water for you, and some crumbs or whatever you've got. And look, here's a string of peanuts I've threaded ready for you. I'll hang those down from one of the nails." As soon as he had finished his job, 2 blue tits were hanging on the peanuts, and a sparrow was on the board where crumbs were spread. Mrs. Hughes was delighted. Could you pull my sofa nearer to the window?" she begged. "I am going to enjoy myself today. Do you think I'll be able to tame any of the birds?" "Well, I've tamed my robin now," said Jack. "He flies onto my hand and takes things from my fingers. You see if you can't tame a robin too." "There, that's all finished. I'll come and see how you're getting on with the birds tomorrow." "Wait, how much do I owe you for this?" asked Mrs. Hughes, getting a purse out from under her cushion. "I know children expect to be paid for every single thing nowadays." "I'm not charging you anything," said Jack. "I do charge a bit when I get orders from people for a bird table, because I'm saving up for my mother's birthday, but I'm not going to charge you a penny. I wouldn't dream of it." And away he went, leaving the old lady feeling that the world wasn't such a lonely, unkind place after all. When Jack told his mother what he had done and how grateful the old lady had been, she didn't say anything for a minute or two. Jack looked at her. "Are you cross, Mummy?" he said. "You didn't mind my going, did you? Honestly, she's such a poor, lonely old lady." "Cross? No, I'm feeling rather ashamed of myself," said his mother. "What am I and the neighbours thinking about, to let a poor old thing like that lie on her sofa and be lonely for weeks on end? I shall go and see her tomorrow and take her some chocolates. I feel rather proud of you, Jack." Before long, everyone heard about Jack's bird table for old Mrs. Hughes, and they heard too that it was full of birds all day long, and that the old lady was no longer lonely and bored. She had her birds now, her birds, her own small visitors. She had a robin that flew into the room and picked crumbs off the table. She had 3 blue tits that swung upside down on the string of nuts and made her laugh till she cried with their antics. She had other visitors too. Jack's mother went to see her and told the neighbours about her, so that they too climbed the many stairs, taking little gifts: a book to read, a magazine, a few flowers. Old Mrs. Hughes couldn't get over it all. "Such kindness," she said, "and all because a strange little boy suddenly appeared and put up that bird table for me. He's a boy in 1,000. I just hope he gets all the money he wants to buy his mother's birthday present. He told me that that's the reason for all his work in making bird tables." Well, Jack did get all the money he wanted. By the time his mother's birthday arrived, he had put up so many bird tables for people that he had over £1 in his savings box, and he went out proudly to spend it. A whole £1! He spent it on a beautiful brooch, and wrapped the little box up carefully in beautiful paper. He watched his mother undo it on her birthday morning. She gasped in delight and stared at it in amazement. "But Jack, it's beautiful. Oh, I did so want a brooch like this, because I lost my other nice one, you know. Jack, how did you manage to get the money for it?" I had some help," said Jack. "It was all because of the sparrows, and robins, and starlings, and blue tits, Mummy. I made bird tables for them, and that's how I got the money." Well, who would have thought that because a boy called Jack knew how to make bird tables, hundreds of birds are well fed this winter? Many people have learnt to love them. An old lady has plenty of friends to visit her, and his mother proudly wears the most beautiful brooch she has ever had. I really feel I'll have to go straight out and make a bird table myself.